Hi, everyone. Josh here. I had said that I would only jump in this week amid the cacophony if I had something that I really think you need to hear about what goes on in the media and how it can create confusion and problems. And that is happening. I'm recording this the day after the election. Millions of people understandably feel traumatized by Trump's victory and Kamala Harris's loss. And I get it. Now, it's also the case that millions of people felt traumatized by Trump's loss 4 years ago. I'm not comparing these two candidates in this sense, not at all. My focus here is on the media. And I know that in the wake of a traumatic loss, amid this shock, people look for explanations. The media jumps in to start offering all these explanations. I was going to read you some headlines, but there are way too many. They're everywhere, and I'm sure you're being inundated with them. There are articles saying, look at the number of Latinos and Black men who voted for Trump, and then there are other articles saying, well, those numbers were slightly less than some predictions, and then there are other articles saying, why are you focusing on those groups when it's white women who voted for Trump? And all of these numbers, all this stuff you're hearing right now is unclear. Initial exit polls and readings of exit polls are notoriously problematic and can be incredibly confusing. All right, I'm just going to give you one example of what's going on here. One of the things I talk about on this podcast is the fact that there's anti-Semitism on the right and the left. Some listeners have been flagging me on some reports about how Jewish people voted, and I'm just sharing this with you as an example. There's this great representative, Richie Torres in New York. He posted on social media this clip of a report that said Fox News exit poll of Jewish vote in New York, Harris 56%, Trump 43%. Then Richie made a great point about that. He said the anti-Israel fanaticism of the far left is entirely to blame for the erosion of Jewish support. But listen to this headline. 79% of Jews voted for Kamala Harris, according to largest preliminary exit poll. I'll put it in the newsletter so you can see it. So if it's 79% of Jewish voters who voted for Kamala, then that's just pretty standard for how Jews vote in America. This same article also notes that another major analysis concluded that 66% of Jewish people voted for Kamala. These numbers are all over the place. So is it 79%? Is it 66%? In New York, is it only 56%? These numbers cannot be trusted this soon. It takes time before we find out what's going on. And speaking of Jewish voters, a listener flagged me on this segment from, of course, Joy Reid over at MSNBC. If you've listened to this show, then you know that I have talked about her in the past and how incredibly many things she gets wrong when it comes to Israel. Anyway, on election night, she brought up the Trump campaign's efforts to reach Arab voters, especially in Michigan, and managed to use that as a segue to her pet issue.
The irony of that, of course, is nobody wanted Donald Trump to be president. Nobody wants Donald Trump to be president more than Bibi Netanyahu, who is backed by a far-right coalition that would like to clear-cut Gaza, that would, it would truly like to complete ethnic cleansing of Gaza.
No, that is not what's happening. She has no clue what she's talking about on this. Meanwhile, it seems Trump did get far more votes among Arab Americans in Michigan than Harris did. There's an article in the New Republic that basically complains that Kamala did not do enough to court Arab and Muslim voters, and basically arguing that she should have been harsher against Israel, which is the exact opposite of what Richie Torres was saying. And given where Americans stand, it certainly seems that being more anti-Israel would have hurt Democrats even more. But also, Arab voters are not just swayed by this. And a lot of Arab voters are swayed by LGBTQ plus issues. They're generally socially conservative on those issues. The Detroit Free Press reported that Muslim activists have fought back against what this article referred to as LGBTQ plus curriculum in public schools and on city property, shutting down a school board meeting 2 years ago. So there are all these other issues. And what I'm saying here is that when you're hearing about different groups, Latino voters, Black voters, Black men, white women, we're going to need more days, more extensive polling, and I'm going to have to take a look at the methodologies in order to start trying to figure out what we really know about the big deciding factors here. And a lot of the data is not about demographics. It's about economics. You see a lot of reports showing that people who felt that the country's going in the wrong direction went with Trump. And there are people pointing out that there are all these anti-incumbent elections that have been taking place all over the world. Here's a little clip from the Washington Post podcast Post Reports with reporter Aaron Blake.
It's telling that if you look at the exit polls, Kamala Harris was not an unpopular candidate. She was viewed favorably by nearly half of voters. But what you did see is that among the approximately 1 in 10 voters who liked neither her nor Donald Trump won them by more than 20 points. That is pointing in the direction of a change candidate winning because people don't like the status quo.
Also, big picture, the parties trade power every several elections. This happens. Each side does have moments of sweeping power. The Democrats have been on an electoral tear for the last 3 elections, in 2018 and 2020, and then 2022, which was a historic midterm for a party that also controlled the White House. So big picture, if you look at history, it's not shocking that there's a swing from one party to the other. I know that does not help when the candidate that one party has chosen is, well, where to even begin with all the problems around him. Many of you know and have heard me talk about them in previous episodes. Now, it's definite that there are people in this country who are misogynist and would not vote for a woman president, and racist who would not vote for a black president or a South Asian president. There are huge numbers of voters who vote for literally anyone in their political party and are just not swayable anyway. All of these factors create this big concoction, and when you're feeling trauma about the result of an election, you are especially susceptible to people who come along with hot takes. That is a big reason that so many people were willing to believe Trump's lies about the election 4 years ago. They were shocked that he lost. That wasn't believable to them. I'm not saying that all the reports you're seeing now are wrong. I'm just saying that we don't have enough information the day of and after an election to tell you all of the reasons that this took place. Take any of the stuff you're seeing and reading with a truckload of salt right now. I'm going to be piecing through data in the coming days and doing my best to tell you in next week's episode what we know and what we don't know. In the meantime, if you heard last week's episode, then you already know this, but if not, I encourage you to go back and listen to, especially the second half of it, because I did a segment in there about a mental exercise that you can follow that can help you process what you're feeling right now. I know it sounds like a non sequitur, but it involves space images and this thing you can do in your mind with concentric circles. You'll see. It's something that worked for me as a journalist, learning how to process the negatives in humanity. And there are a lot of people who are celebrating today. Some of you believe that this was the right call for America. Look, the most optimistic thing to do is to hope that things go well. Because I am so into facts and truth, I obviously cannot stand behind Trumpism, in which lying proudly and loudly is the key to success. But none of that means that the Democrats get everything right either. And I have said this before, just like a plurality of Americans, I am independent. All right, to everyone committed to truth and justice and acceptance and all these good things, sending big love. I'll post some stuff in the newsletter, including a link that should help you get directly to the mental exercise I was just talking about. You all can send me the kinds of stuff that you want me to fact check that you're seeing in the media. There are 2 ways to do that. Those of you who are paid subscribers to my newsletter, you can message me there or use the comments. Everyone else can find a link at my website, joshlebs.com. It will take me and my producer, Don, time and energy and money to do this, as always. So if you are in a position to support the show, there are 2 ways to do that. One is to become a paid subscriber at the newsletter. The other is that there is a contribution link where you can give any amount. And we also have some merch. We got these QR code stickers and bumper stickers and bumper magnets. When you make that contribution, we get in touch to let you know how you can get it. All right, deep breath. Let's work to move forward in ways that make sense based on truth, which equals facts plus context. Thank you so much for listening. I will see you next week.